there, I am Svila Bekin, the Rabbi from Another Planet. Please like, share, and gently and lovingly caress the subscribe button and ring the little bell so you're notified when new videos drop. And I'd like to talk to you about Star Trek Discovery. Once again, because I've been trying to make this video for like a week and a half and I just haven't got round to it. And what finally spurred me on is yet another discussion on Facebook about somebody not understanding how people don't like Star Trek Discovery. And Discovery has been, to be fair, somewhat divisive. If people vehemently like it, or like me, I just really, really hated it. And I want to explain why and lay out my case. And my reasoning saying that just seems to me to be somewhat, reasonable. Doesn't seem to be crazy at all. But again, if you liked it, God bless you. I'm really happy that you liked it, and I'm actually kind of envious. I wish I liked it as well. And let's be fair. There was a lot to like. It looks beautiful. It's shot fantastically. They pour tons of money into it, and you can tell. They can tell how much money they put into it. And actually, I have to say, the first 10 episodes I was really into. I really, really enjoyed them. I think that's because the show was developed by a guy called Brian Fuller. So if you know Fuller, he's a bit of a visionary television maker. You can always tell, like, when it's one of his shows. He did Pushing Daisies, Dead Like Me, the Hannibal Lecter series with Mads Mikkelsen, which I think surpassed Annie Hopkins' take on the role. You can always tell a Brian Fuller series has got a very distinctive look and feel. And I think those first 10 episodes really had that look and feel, which I really enjoyed. Everything apart from the uniforms. I thought the uniforms were horrible. Up until the Enterprise shows up in season 2, at the beginning, and I love the Enterprise uniforms, and they're very bright and vibrant and an interesting new take in it. So this is just pure speculation on my part, but I think those uniforms really come from the Brian Fuller days, and they were brought in the second season by the subsequent showrunner, Alex Kurtzman, who there must have been some kind of political battle going on behind the scenes with Kurtzman winning out. Again, purely my speculation. But those first 10 episodes I thought were pretty darn solid. It was, at least it kept my attention. I didn't notice the problems if they were there. I haven't been back to watch it since season 2 because I was just so put off by season 2. Let me tell you what I thought did work. Firstly, I love the design of Discovery, which comes right out of the initial designs for Star Trek Phase 2 in the late 70s. Before they made Star Trek Motion Picture, they were going to bring Star Trek back as a TV show called Star Trek Phase 2, and essentially the Discovery design was the design for the refitted Enterprise. And I thought that was a really nice nod to people who are really massive fans of the show. Also, I think a lot of the Klingon designs came from them. Let's talk about the Klingons. People hated the Klingons. Like, traditionalists hated the Klingons. For me, they worked fantastically because, look, Klingons have been redesigned a number of times. I think 4 times now. I recognize them as Klingons. I thought they added a lot of depth to Klingon society. Now, I know Klingons, again, have changed, and they explained how they changed by retconning them, in Enterprise, explaining why they lost their bumpy foreheads. But for me, the explanation they had in Deep Space Nine was far more satisfying when they went back in time to the Trouble with Tribbles episode, and O'Brien's like, well, what's going on? Why did the Klingons look like that? He says, we don't like to talk about it. I just thought that was hilarious, and it dealt with it. Because we all know the real reason the Klingons have changed is with a couple of reasons. One, the effect technology, the prosthetic technology is so much better now, or in the 80s than it was in the 60s. And also audiences have changed, they've moved. So to get an audience to feel the same thing in like 1990 as it did in 1965, you've got to do different things. And you've got to do different things in 2016, 2017 to make them feel the same thing. So for me, the Klingons weren't a problem at all. I also like Harry Mudd. A lot of people hated Harry Mudd. I thought he was different. He was different from how he appeared in the original series. That's how I got through the first season. I just said, well, obviously it's in a different timeline, an alternate universe. It's not in the Star Trek universe, and that was in my head canon. So I just enjoyed it. I'm not really a continuity fundamentalist. I'm much more into, as long as it tells a good and engaging story, I can forgive most things. And I just don't think season 2 did that. I don't think it gave a satisfying story. The other great thing in season 1 was the other controversial thing in season 1. I like Sarek. I like the whole I thought inserting Burnham into the Spock household was a bit iffy, but I could live with it because I really enjoyed this new take on Sarek, and I felt it worked, and I felt it was again a little bit shoehorning, but because it told a story that moved me and kept me going, I forgave it. And finally, I think other thing that really worked in season 1 was Lorca. Who was it? Jason Isaacs. Jason Isaacs was marvelous, and the whole idea of an early Starfleet at war and examining the all the moral complexities of war is very Star Trekky. It's very clever, very interesting, and again, it's stuff that Star Trek normally does, I think, very, very well. So, okay, right now I've alienated everybody who loves Star Trek Discovery. So now let me alienate everybody who loves Star Trek Discovery by talking about my problems with Season 2. And my problems with Season 2 really begin with Michael Burnham. If you don't like Michael Burnham, this show might not be for you. Because she is, and I know people do not like the use of this phrase, but she is the definition of a Mary Sue character. Maybe in season 1 I didn't notice it so much. Maybe she wasn't in season 1, but in season 2 she was, because everything revolved around her. In season 2 she was infallible. She was perfect in every way. Now, it's not like Kirk or Picard were so fallible, and certainly we had a lot more time with them to see whatever weaknesses they had in their characters. But this is importantly, they weren't the catalysts to solve each and every problem on every episode and every movie, which Michael Burnham was. She was a catalyst to solve everything, and it just became silly. Like, why was she the test pilot on those pod things from the first episode of season 2? Look, she's a xenobiologist. Like, how did that happen? It just made no sense. And it was just silly. And most importantly, it took me out of the fantasy. So I couldn't enjoy the narrative that they were putting forward. And that was really just the beginning of the season. It got worse and worse and worse. By the end of the season, she was the most important and central character in the universe. And again, it was just silly. So if you don't particularly like or care about Michael Burnham, watching the show was just torture. Every other iteration of Star Trek has been an ensemble. Sure, an ensemble with stars, but an ensemble. And there was no single character that literally everything pivoted on. And for goodness sake, if you're going to give your lead character a name that is counter to their gender, at some point you've really got to acknowledge and explain that. Just ignoring it's weird. Why do that? So that's just the first thing I couldn't get over to say this was a good and a watchable show. Next thing is, let's talk about Tilly, who I actually found less irritating than Michael Burnham. Tilly, I think, is a Hollywoodized version of the person who they want their audience to be. And that's why Tilly is so often positively affirmed. It actually became like a drinking game. How many times she was positively affirmed per episode. And told you, just gosh darn it, Tilly, you can do anything if you put your mind towards it. No, you can't, Tilly. Not everybody can do everything. Tilly is a woman who has grown up in the age of participation trophies. It's no bad thing to struggle. It's no bad thing to fail. Or to understand that some things take actual, real work. Like not a hard afternoon, but decades of determination and strength. And having no idea if you'll succeed or fail. And pushing forward anyway. If Tilly wants to be captain, which I don't think she did before Burnham insisted that's what she wanted, if she wanted to be captain, then she's got to completely change her life and dedicate herself to that. And this is not a 2 to 6 month project. And let's get real. There's no way she was going to win that marathon. Especially when she stopped to chat to her adult version, a vision of an adult version of her childhood friend. It was just stupid. I'm sorry. So yeah, okay. Let's talk about the elephant in the room and drill down what was really driving a lot of what was problematic with Discovery. And I think it's the belief that women, again, the current day political belief that women are under attack by men in the form of a patriarchy and have been forever. It's very fashionable, especially in the entertainment industry, to believe that women are rising up and throwing off this oppression. But what if they're not? What if that's not really happening? What if that oppression isn't real? Let me backtrack and say, sure, in Hollywood, the Me Too thing was real. Of course it's real. But why was anybody surprised by it? Didn't we all know about the casting couch and the abuses? I actually knew about Harvey Weinstein. And I know nothing about Hollywood. I'm not in Hollywood, but it's just so well known and so written about. If you read between the lines, it was no surprise to me at all. Yeah, I saw this great video on YouTube the other day. Candace Owens, which I know might trigger a bunch of you. Candace Owens talking to a woman about toxic masculinity. She wanted to know how to define toxic masculinity. What's an example of it? And she said, "Well, how about when a man interrupts a woman?" And so Owens said, "Wait a minute, but you interrupted me in our conversation." She said, "Well, that's not because of any toxicity. That's because I just very much disagreed with your point. I had a reason to interrupt you." So Owens asked her, "Well, maybe when men interrupt you, they felt the same way." But this woman who was advocating for the feminist view of a male patriarchy, she couldn't even comprehend that. It was just like, no, obviously they were interrupting me only because I'm a woman. They would never interrupt a man that way. And that's just not not reality. It's just kind of nonsense. This woman couldn't conceive of being anything else. It was kind of like in the Captain Marvel movie, who had she had these visions of childhood memories of being told she sucked at baseball and she got up and played anyway, and she sucked at boxcar and she carried on doing it anyway. Is it not possible maybe she did suck at baseball and she was ruining it for everybody else involved? Maybe she was ruining this game of baseball for all these boys because she insisted she had to play and she just couldn't do it and she was useless at it. But maybe is that just not a possibility? So obviously, no matter what side of the argument you're on, I think we can all say this is driven by the total meltdown caused by the 2016 election and the subsequent Me Too scandal. Which is actually an interesting inversion of reality, because the Me Too scandal only was allowed to come to light because the person who won the election won it. If the other person won it, she had been suppressing these scandals for, I think, decades. And the only reason that Weinstein was, they tried to publish an article a while ago about Weinstein several times, and she apparently she had it quashed. So anyway, so it's all driven by Me Too. And again, yes, those abuses happen in Hollywood, and they're disgusting and horrible, and nobody would advocate for them. But I just don't think that's a representation of a wider society. I think that's a representation of a very sick, immoral society, which Hollywood is. I think if you go out into more rural areas, people are just better than that. I think people are decent. I do. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. I mean, I've been married for 22 years. I have 2 daughters. No female in my life has ever received any abuse because they're female. I have no personal experience of it. I don't know anybody who does have personal experience of it. And because there is a belief that these abuses are normal, it was a encompassing thread through everything in Star Trek Discovery, which I truly believe is most of the reason people who rabidly support the show because they equally believe it. Cause I just don't believe somebody could support it based on its merits, because especially the second season, it had such little merit beyond the design work and the visuals of it. Actually, that brings me to a little aside. When you have these conversations with somebody who likes Discovery, they always say, you're just reading into it. You're just reading this stuff into it, and it's not really there. But universally, I mean literally universally, the people who say that also read the same things, and they like Discovery because of that. And it just comes out in conversation within 2 or 3 minutes after them saying that. And yeah, like with anything, if it's done well, with talent, with care, with intelligence, it could have worked. Alas, this just wasn't the case with Star Trek Discovery. And like with so many things that become injected with current day politics, just do it badly. They lose the ability to tell a good story. Doctor Who season 11 is another great example. It's really hard to work out which is worse, Discovery or Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who. Actually, funnily enough, the Captain Marvel movie, I think pulled it off the bit. I don't think it was a great movie. I think it was one of the weaker Marvel movies, but at least it was engaging and entertaining, which I think Discovery and Doctor Who both failed to be. And with Discovery, the emancipation of women thread through it, it was just silly because I think women have been emancipated minimally for 30, 40 decades, no, for 3 or 4 decades. I don't know anybody who has any problem of a woman in an authority position. I certainly don't. It's not even on my radar. It's like being offended at somebody for having red hair. It's just not on my radar at all. But I guess this Mary Sue thing must be real. I don't really understand it. That they find it offensive to have a female character who isn't perfect and in charge. It's the 70-80% female crew complement, which again they never acknowledge, and it's so like glaringly obvious, and you can't not notice it. Just like Michael Burnham's name, it means that we're in this dark parallel universe where there isn't freedom of choice, and women must have been press ganged into Starfleet, or there's been some cataclysm that's wiped out all the males, or at least made them impossible for them to get onto a starship, or like a lot of the males in the universe. It's just weird, and it pulls me out of the narrative. But on top of that, I think we can all objectively agree on the writing just became nonsensical and self-contradictory. And I'm not talking about contradictory in terms of it contradicted much of Star Trek lore and continuity. Which I said I'm not a continuity fundamentalist. If you tell a good story, I can probably get past it. But it contradicted its own rules that it set up. Like at one point, the people from the mirror universe can't handle light in our universe, and then they just forget about that rule altogether. And the rules they set up just don't stand up to. They just so obviously didn't make any sense. Like, how did nobody know where the Hiawatha was? That the ship they found crashed in the first episode. The woman stayed on board to make sure people can get out and they survive. So surely they made it back to a starbase somewhere. And, they can say, oh, by the way, we have a crashed ship over there. Maybe you can send somebody to pick it up. How did they not know about that? And that's where I was so many times watching the show. I went, well, what? That didn't make sense. And even Discovery's most ardent defenders must have been a bit let down by the finale. Okay, before we get to the finale, let's wind it back to episode 1. And for me, the problem started with Lieutenant Mansplainer in episode 1, who was a parody of every arrogant guy in college who spoke down to a woman. Lieutenant Mansplainer's only purpose in the story was to get blown up whilst not listening to Michael Burnham and talking down to her. I think his last line was something like, just like I told my roommate in the academy, I got a BAM! And blows up, I think that was clearly the only reason he was there. I mean, other than to subvert the expectation of Spock's going to show up, and he didn't. And there are just so many more instances of this nonsense. This video will go on and on and on for hours if I catalogue them all. But yeah, okay, so let's just move on to good old-fashioned bad writing. And again, there's just so much. That pod sequence made zero sense. Why couldn't they have used the spacesuits from the first season, or a shuttlecraft, or it made such little sense. It looked like Kurtzman was ripping off a scene from Star Trek Into Darkness, which he also wrote when Khan and Kirk jumped from ship to ship, which in itself was ripping off another scene from the first JJ Trek, which worked much better when they all jumped down to the drilling rig. Okay, fine. So let's talk about the series starts, and it's all about finding these signals from the Red Angel. and they know they have these 7 signals, but they don't know where they are. So how do you know you have 7 signals if you don't know where they are? If somebody's like, say, yeah, what is it? It seems like a weird, like, scavenger hunt. Like, if we know there's a signal, we should know where it's emanating from. Otherwise, how do we know there's a signal? It's and there's a specific one of them, and then this season mutates halfway through into there's this AI who is a textbook definition of sentient, and yet for some reason isn't sentient until it gets this data dump, and that data can't be destroyed. And look, what you can't strap a photon torpedo to it and blow it up? You know, of course you can just anything can be blown up. We've seen that in Star Trek. And the only way it can be destroyed is if it's sent to a future, which seems like it's ripping off Looper, which made sense in Looper, because you're talking about physically removing something. We're talking about data, which isn't physical. Again, it just made little sense. When they went to Saru's planet, and Saru had to be a refugee, really. When they went to Saru's planet, they started a genocidal war, and nobody blinked an eyelid. What happened to the Prime Directive? You know, and that's just, again, scratching the surface. In the final episode, you had Admiral Cornwall, who valiantly sacrificed herself so Pike could get out, but you would have thought she had to hold down some kind of control or something to make the torpedo not blow up. But she didn't. She just stood there and she and she just waited a couple of seconds before she blew up. She could have just walked out the door with Pike, and really, that door was enough to save them. Yeah, the Klingons have time travel crystals, and they never used them before. I just, like, every episode, I had, like, 4 or 5, like, WTF moments where I went, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. Have you ever watched Star Trek with a friend who doesn't understand science fiction, and they're like, what's that? Are they beaming up now? Who's that? What's going on? And it seems to me those are the people who have written Star Trek Discovery. People have little to no understanding of science, of science fiction. Yeah, there's so many things. Like, there's sonar in space, and oh my god, it just, all of it. Every episode, if I could pick apart every episode so nicely, and yeah, okay, you could nitpick anything. You can nitpick anything, but the art of good writing is to drag you into the narrative and carry through it, so you don't notice these inconsistencies. And that's where, for me, Star Trek Discovery completely failed. So, really, in short, what was my problems with Star Trek Discovery? Michael Burnham, Tilly, not so much Tilly, but really Tilly, terrible writing, like unbelievably bad writing, and unending current day politics inserted into everything, running right through everything. And again, if you're on board for current day politics, I can understand why you liked it. If you believe there's forces of evil that need to be resisted, that are gaining control in the world, I understand why you liked it. If you don't see that, and which at least half the world doesn't agree that's the case, then it just got to be silly. So outside the injection of a ideological agenda, so outside, I just don't understand how anybody could get past all the many plot holes in every single episode. So that's why I didn't like Discovery. Again, if you liked it, God bless you. I'm envious of you. I wish I was you. But for me, I just it was nails on a chalkboard awful. So I'm glad we had that chat. So my name is Fela Beckett, the Rabbi from Another Planet. Please like, share, and subscribe, and let me know what you think.